in the state of Kansas. We know we have the same old bad actors, the governor, the former governor. We've got the big money coming out of the east that's going to go into the general election. And I fear for the fate of Kansas in the general election. I fear for the fate of the United States. I've known Dave Owens for 20 years. I know that he stands firmly to back the president, back the wall, save our gun rights, anti-abortion, and I don't think it's going to be too much different a statement than these other people are going to make. What I do believe is, since he's replacing Pat Roberts, pardon? I've got 30 seconds, okay. What I do believe, that in order to replace Pat Roberts with a Republican, we've got to win the general election. I believe Dave Owens, with his career in football, his career on the county commission, his career in Johnson County Community College, is the man that can bring that home for us. And as Pat Roberts said, I believe Dave Lindstrom can bring people into the Big Ten. And I think some of you have heard that. So I urge you to vote for Dave Lindstrom.
Thank you, and we wish Dave Lindstrom well, and he is in our prayers for a speedy recovery. I'm going to turn it over now to Pete Mundo. Before I do that, I don't want the candidates distracted. And that east door, it's pretty neat, noisy. Can somebody shut that door, because we can hear it up here and it'll be distracting, and I think our candidates ought to probably not be distracted. All right, Pete Mundo, morning talk host, 7:10 a.m. and 103.7 FM. Many of you in this area, of course, listen to him probably most every morning. He covers all our local, state, and national issues. Has a lot of good guests on his show. I imagine that we will be seeing these three perhaps on his show over the next several months. In 2019, Pete Mundo organized and hosted the first KC mayoral debate. He did a great job with that debate. We were impressed with that. He handled our 3rd district debate for us yesterday and did a fantastic job with that. So we're very appreciative of Pete Mundo handling the debate for us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Pete now. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Mike and Shannon for having me out to host today's debate. A couple of reminders for all of you in the audience. No applause, speaking, or otherwise participation today in the debate by any means other than silent observation. If an audience member fails to comply, they will be subject to removal from the audience and the facility. We had no problems yesterday, but I do know Mike still has these guys backstage, so I don't want to mess with them. So thank you for that. Let's get right to it, and we will start with our opening statements and the order that was chosen. Secretary Kobach, you're up.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. I'll begin by introducing my wife, Heather, and my 3 of my 5 daughters who are here, Lily, Molly, and Reagan. And I want to begin by saying this. Isn't it funny how this time of year, as we come into an election year, everybody loves the word conservative. Everybody's a conservative. And then, of course, people get into office and we learn something different. But you guys know that I've delivered for the conservative movement throughout my political career. As Secretary of State, I promised I'd make Kansas the toughest state in the nation against voter fraud, and we did it. Photo ID and proof of citizenship and prosecuting voter fraud. And on immigration, I've done a lot of things too that many of you know about. I've been advising the president for the past 4 years on immigration policy. I co-authored the Arizona law, the Arizona laws that went all the way to the Supreme Court. I was the attorney who represented the ICE agents who sued the Obama administration to stop the DACA amnesty. And most recently, I led the construction of the first privately constructed border wall in American history. So I've done a little bit on immigration too. But what I want to tell you today is that I want to make some commitments to you that I will deliver on in the future. Now, right off the bat, I'm the only person on the stage who has signed both the pledge not to increase taxes and the pledge to favor term limits. But beyond that, there's some things I can do that I don't think others can do. One is, I want to lead the president's initiative on immigration. I want to be his point man to carry the ball in the United States Senate. There's nobody in the Senate who's doing that right now. I was just at the White House meeting with the president on Monday, working with Jared Kushner on the outline of the bill, and I want to carry that bill in the United States Senate next year. He needs someone who goes immigration backward and forward. Number two, judges. I was a professor of law for 15 years. Many of you know that. I was a professor of constitutional law. And there are a lot of judges who get put forward who are activists, even in a Republican administration. The Bush administration made that mistake many times. Trump has not done so far. But he needs a backstop to ensure that only true originalists get on the court. That will preserve our Constitution, life, and the Second Amendment. Thank you.
Senator Wagle, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces of conservative activists that are here with me today. I've worked with you for many years on many issues in the State House. I'd like to introduce my husband, Tom Wade. Tom and I, when we were first married, we were school teachers, and Tom would buy real estate on the side. He'd fix it up, he'd sell it, he'd lease it, and after a while, we both left the teaching profession to run our own small businesses. Pretty soon in 1990, I had a number of people come to me and say, Susan, you have to run for public office. The Kansas legislature had doubled property taxes on residential property. I had no interest in running for office, but when I would lay my head down on my pillow at night, I could hear those babies cry from an abortion clinic down the street where we had an abortionist who was practicing abortions on viable infants for women all around the world. It was a deep scar on the state of Kansas. I filed on the filing deadline. I being an establishment pro-choice female, I won big. I learned quickly that if I didn't elect other conservatives to the State House, I'd never pass any bills. Every election cycle, I've helped conservatives win. And I was eventually elected to leadership in the House, elected to leadership in the Senate. I'm now the Senate President. And just this past Wednesday, I had a huge victory. I carried the Value Them Both Amendment to make sure that abortion legislation is written by the legislature and not written by the courts. I am the one proven conservative in this race. I get things done. People follow me. I can bring a groundswell of Republicans to the ballot. I can articulate the conservative message. I can prove for all of us that we'll have a big win in November if I'm the nominee. I'm reliable. I don't only walk the walk. I talk the talk. When I get to DC, I will be your voice. I'll be your proven conservative voice. I will be effective, and I'll win in both August and November.
Congressman Marshall, 2 minutes for your opening statement.
98%. 98%. If you remember one thing from this morning's debate, I hope that you remember that I have voted with Donald Trump 98% of the time on the top 10 voting records in Congress. I'm running to keep Kansas great, to protect our Kansas values and our Kansas families. I'm running for future generations. I'm a fifth-generation farm kid who became a first-generation college student. My American dream was to become a doctor. My wife of 36 years and I raised 4 wonderful kids in rural Kansas where I practiced medicine and delivered over 5,000 babies. I want to make sure future generations of Kansas had that same opportunity, that same shot at the American dream that I've had. I'm running to keep standing beside this president to stop the left's socialist agenda. I'm running to protect our economy and our jobs, to make sure we have a strong military, that we have secure borders, that we keep our promises to veterans. I'm running to confirm conservative judges, to protect our Second Amendment and all our God-given constitutional rights. And I'm going to keep standing with the most pro-life president in American history to protect life. Agriculture. 40% of the Kansas economy is made up by agriculture. I'm running to make sure Kansas has a voice on the Ag Committee and to continue to deliver strong trade agreements for Kansas, agreements that lead to jobs. And finally this, if I could do 3 things over my next 7 years, what would they be? Number 1 is I would build a wall. Number 2, I would fix health care. And number 3, I would balance the budget. I look forward to sharing my vision of Kansas with you all today. I'm going to share how we're going to keep Kansas great and how we're going to keep America great. Thank you.
So based on the order, the first question here will go to State Senator Wagle. Senator, with the news yesterday that the Senate voted to not call new witnesses in the impeachment trial of Donald Trump, the president's almost certain to be acquitted next week. So based on what you've all heard, read, and analyzed the past several weeks, when is impeachment warranted?
When is what?
When is impeachment warranted?
Only when, in the cases of bribery, treason, and high crimes. Absolutely, Trump didn't meet that standard. The Democrats they planned an impeachment process on your tax dollars. They wanted to make false claims against him on TV, hour after hour, day after day, because he's up for an election. They never accepted his election in the first place. The president was never given due process. The president didn't have any rights, and the House didn't follow any of the past history of the process for impeachment. It was a total sham, and it was a device used by the Democrat Party to defeat Trump this November. But that's not going to happen, folks. It's turning on them, and thank God the Senate last night said we will not call witnesses. I stand with President Trump. I've been standing for conservative values for many, many, many years. I get things done. I failed to mention that I have 15 grandkids. My kids are grown, and oh my goodness, they're people of faith, and they're all strong Republicans. 15 grandkids. One more on the way. I'll get to show him to you on my party in August at my victory party. But here's the deal. We need someone who has Trump's back. We need someone who can work with other conservatives, someone who can lift conservatives up on the ballot here in Kansas. We need to win back the third for President Trump. If you put me at the top of the ticket, we'll beat Sharice Davis, because I'm an articulate, conservative candidate who gets things done, and I can cause a movement here in Kansas, just like I have in the Kansas legislature in electing conservatives.
Congressman Marshall, you have 90 seconds.
Well, we just finished a 20-city tour in Kansas, and I'll tell you something. Kansans are more concerned about the Super Bowl than the silly impeachment hearing. This truly has been a hoax. I believe I was the first congressman to call the Russian hoax a hoax, just that. And that the Ukraine event was also a hoax. I stood beside the president. Just this past 2 weeks ago, the president had me at the Oval Office to thank me for my support. And after he signed the USMCA trade agreement, he reached out and shook my hand and said, "Thank you again, Roger, for the support, for the speech that you've given us." I'll tell you when it's not an impeachable offense. It's when it's used as a political weapon. That this should be decided by the American people, not by political activists like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So I stood beside the president. I've proven my faith in him. And just thanks to everybody who's given me those encouragement and those thanks for standing by the president.
You have 90 seconds.
Nancy Pelosi recently went on the Chuck Marr show, and she said, "Impeach forever." The next impeachment campaign is going to begin the day after President Trump is sworn into his second term of office. Make no mistake about it, that is when it's going to begin. The Senate is the final barricade against impeachment of a president. And the president needs people in the Senate who actually understand the Constitution and can make the case not only in the Senate but to the American people. I was a professor of constitutional law for 15 years. And let me tell you, I've written extensively about impeachment, and these latest two charges were completely bogus. The notion that abuse of power is an impeachable offense is absurd. Every president has been accused of abuse of power by his political enemies, and the framers specifically avoided the British term maladministration, which is their impeachable thing, because it was too broad. And they thought they were going to do something much narrower with treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So that is certainly not an impeachable offense. And the other one, obstruction of Congress. Again, every president since Washington has obstructed Congress by asserting executive privilege. Did you know that Eisenhower, our Kansas president, asserted executive privilege more than any other president? 44 times. Go Ike! Look, that's part of being president. Reagan asserted executive privilege, I believe, 14 times. Clinton asserted executive privilege 6 times. Obama, only 1 time. That was a surprise. And Trump has asserted executive privilege 3 times. A president has to have confidential communications with his advisors. You need someone who can make the case for the president.
Congressman Marshall, this question goes to you. This race has received an enormous amount of attention nationwide due to the previous rumors and reports involving Secretary of State Pompeo's interest in running, combined with the success of Democrats in the state in 2018. As the voters in the room look for a winner for a seat that's been Republican for 90 years, why are you the most electable candidate?
Well, number one is I've stood beside the president, and I will keep standing beside the president. I'm the only person up here with a track record of standing beside the president. Next is I have Kansas values. Born and raised in this entire state. There's not a job in this state that I've not done. Whether it's healthcare or agriculture, oil and gas industry, I understand Kansas economics. I'm going to make sure that our economies are strong, that we have good roads and bridges, that we have great schools as well. I believe that I'm the candidate that makes sure that the American public knows that Kansas is not purple, that we have a strong Republican Party in Kansas. We are the person, if the polls were released today, we would beat Barbara Bollier by 10 or 15 points. We're going to send her and the Democrats packing, and what I just said about the polling is not true for every person up here. I'm the person that has shown leadership in Kansas and will keep leading.
Just a reminder, please, no applause. Thank you. Secretary Kobach.
You know, that's a good question. And I want to answer that because as someone who's been through who has been in 3 statewide elections and has won 2 of 3, but lost 1, I've had that opportunity to have the experience and to look at the numbers and to look exactly what it takes to win or lose an election statewide. Now, let me tell you one thing. In 2018, did you know that I got 21,000 more votes than Brownback got in his re-elect in 2014? And we thought that was our goal that we had to achieve. That would be a reasonable goal, wouldn't it? But it turns out that there was a blue wave in the 3rd district of an extra 80,000 votes. And so when you look at the dynamic, you have to look at the numbers. And we've been doing that. Having won 2 out of 3, I can say that in this presidential election year, I'm certain we will win again. The reason for that is several. One is Senate elections and governor elections are different. As you know, the Democrats use the K-12 education issue like a sledgehammer, and they hit every governor over the head with it and make it sound like we're going to close schools. That's not present in a Senate election race. On federal issues, they align much more strongly with us, the voters do. But when you have a president and a Senate on the ballot together, the history shows that the best Senate candidate who can capture all of the votes that go to President Trump is the candidate who aligns most closely with President Trump. If voters see daylight between President Trump and that person, then they're less likely to shift those votes. He's going to win by 15 to 20%. There's no question about that. The senator who can most align with him is I. I'm the only one who endorsed President Trump in the primaries in 2016. You all remember that. Took a lot of heat for that. I'm the only person who's been advising the president. I'm the only person whose number 1 issue has been President Trump's number 1 issue, immigration. To win in a presidential election year, I meet the best criteria for winning in the Senate race.
State Senator Wingle, 90 seconds.
There's no question. I am the only proven conservative who has got things done standing on this stage. I've elected other conservatives. I've won my own race. I've passed legislation. I passed the first pro-life bill in 1997 in a pro-choice House and a pro-choice Senate. Since then, I've passed 15 pro-life bills. As Senate President, I made sure we have constitutional carry in the state of Kansas. I have a 100% voting record with the NRA. I have passed bills. I have been elected to leadership. I'm the one candidate you can trust who can win this race, who can elect other conservatives underneath me, and who can get things done when I get there. I will be your voice. I am a fighter. You won't have to call me and say, hey, Susan, vote right on this bill. I always vote right. I'm a conservative. I'm a business leader. I have grandkids. To heck with the socialist movement. Let's pull back the conservatives. Let's not unite. Let's win in Kansas, keep Kansas red with a proven conservative, lift up and win the 3rd. And oh, by the way, we have a lot of legislative seats at stake. Now that we've lost the governorship and Laura Kelly is raising money and threatening my people, she's only going to go against conservative legislators this next election cycle. She's not going to care about moderates. And she's going to try to defeat conservatives. This is an important election. You have to have a proven conservative in this race at the top of the ticket.
Secretary Kobach, we will turn to you for this question. In the Kansas Republican Party platform, it states, legal immigration is a blessing to the country, and with the promises of America, a blessing to all. Preserving that promise for future generations requires that we protect the sovereignty of our country and secure our borders. Illegal immigration is not compatible with this goal. The issue of agricultural work visas are obviously critical of many in the rural parts of our state. So how would you merge the elements of the administration's immigration platform and goals with the needs of many across rural Kansas?
So I have 45 minutes for this question?
90 seconds.
Oh, okay. Look, I can talk about this for a long time. There's multiple things that we have to do as far as satisfying the agricultural needs of Western Kansas. Absolutely, we need workers, and there are many U.S. citizens, but many U.S. citizens aren't actually applying for those jobs anymore because the wages have gone down. Why have the wages gone down? And I don't mean haven't risen with inflation. They've gone down. Why has that happened? Because cheap, illegal labor has come in to force the wages down. Wage depression is something that has hurt the working men and women in America. And that's one of the reasons I feel strongly about stopping illegal immigration. If I'm elected, not only will I carry the president's immigration bill on the floor, we're going to do a lot of other things too. We are going to build the wall. Did you know that even if the president gets everything done he sees as an objective this year, it'll be 550 miles total of pedestrian-proof wall? Our border is 1,900 miles long. We've got so much more to do in a second term. I'll also be ending sanctuary cities. I drafted a bill that ended sanctuary cities in Kansas. It passed out of committee in the Senate. Susan would bring it up for a vote. And one more thing I would do, E-Verify. E-Verify is something you have to have to ensure that workers are only hiring lawful workers. I will be pushing for E-Verify in the U.S. Senate. I would like to know if Roger Marshall is going to push for E-Verify or not. Will he vote for mandatory E-Verify for all workers in America so that we can ensure that there is no more illegal immigration taking jobs from hardworking men and women?
So you are both addressed in that answer. So we'll keep the order going here for now. State Senator Wagle, you have 90 seconds.
Actually, we have no sanctuary cities in the state of Kansas, thankfully. And if our constitutional scholar here knew his books, he'd know that the majority leader runs bills, not the Senate president. Here's the deal. I was on the border. I've seen what's happening. I went into the ICE facilities for unattended children. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are crossing the Rio Grande every day. And because there's no wall. And the cartel is in control. They make $53 million a week in human trafficking and drug smuggling. The first thing we need is a wall. We need borders. We need safe borders. But we have thousands and thousands of people are being let into our country in waiting for a hearing for asylum. They have been abused. The cartel is like ISIS. They torture people. It's a deplorable situation. We have a war going on in our southern border. The immigration bill that we passed to fix this will be a compromise, and I believe we should allow people who are waiting for an asylum hearing to work, to have a work visa, rather than to go underground and have to engage in illegal activity. The immigration bill will be Trump-centered. We will have a border, we will have a wall, but we have to do something about needing workers in America, especially right now when the economy is booming. In my city, in the city of Wichita, we're very short of workers, and why not let those who are seeking asylum, and they have a legitimate claim, before they go to that judge, why not give them a temporary work visa, charge them an extra tax, but don't push them underground, okay? Don't push them into illegal activity. There's lots of ways to fix this. I stand with Trump, and I'll get things done when I'm elected.
You were mentioned, but you still have 90 seconds for a full response.
I've always believed that border security and overhauling a very broken immigration system go hand in hand, that we can do both of them. But if you don't fix the wall, if you don't build the wall, no matter what rabbit hole you go down with immigration, it won't stand the test of time. I've stood beside President Trump twice, the only person that can say that on this stage. I've stood with him twice, getting legislation to the floor that had $25 billion of funding for his wall, as well as e-verification in that bill. It also fixed a very broken immigration system. We have 70,000 open jobs in Kansas, and by the way, the average wage growth for hardworking blue-collar Americans has went up 4.5% this past year, something that President Trump is very proud of. So I believe, having been in all 105 counties, having been to the border twice, that we can do both. We can secure our borders and fix a broken immigration system. But remember this, what Barbara Boyd wants to do, she wants open borders, she wants sanctuary cities. I'm going to stand beside President Trump and keep standing with President Trump to stop that left socialist agenda.
This question goes to State Senator Wagle. While phase one of the U.S. trade deal has resulted in optimism amongst the ag community, there's still a wait-and-see approach. How should we continue to deal with some of the ag producers across the state who are continuing to carry the extra burden of tariffs?
Oh my goodness. God bless our farmers. They stand with Trump. They're willing to take a little hit, and they're very thankful that Trump has helped subsidize it while he renegotiates everything with China. We should have had USMCA passed and when it was first given to Congress. President Trump has waited a year. Most of our trade is here in North and South America. But I will stand with Trump, and the one thing I'll do is I'll tell Mitch McConnell, put me on the Ag Committee. I want to represent Kansas. I promise to go on the Ag Committee. I promise to stay on the Ag Committee. I'm not going to get asked to get off for a higher profile position that may bring more money to my account. Kansas, the foundation of Kansas is agriculture, and we sell products all around the world. I will ask for the Ag Committee. I'll stay on the Ag Committee. Last year I passed a bill for Kansas farmers. It was a health care bill. They couldn't afford health insurance. Our family farmers don't have a lot of employees. They have a small pool. Maybe they have 1 or 2 workers. We passed a bill where they could have their own insurance company without the mandates of Obamacare. And now they can buy health insurance for their families, for the family farm, at about 50% of the cost. And it's great health insurance. I will stand with the farmers, and we're going to work through this tariff thing. We need free trade, but we need fair trade. And that's what President Trump is doing for us from a position of strength. He's negotiating for us as a true leader. Thank God for President Trump. Thank God for our farmers who stand with him. I'll stand with the farmers on the Ag Committee.
Congressman Marshall, 90 seconds.
Trade, trade, and more trade. That's what the answer is. I was proud to be the only congressman President Trump invited to the United Nations to stand beside him when he signed the Japanese trade agreement, which means a record growth in beef exports for Kansas. I was so proud to stand up on the stage this past week with President Trump and be one of the first hands he reached out after he signed the USMCA trade agreement. So proud that we were one of the first offices he called and reached out to when he reached the Phase 1 China trade deal. I'm going to keep working on those trade deals. So far, we have passed 55% of the trade agreements for all of our exports. We're working on the European Union right now with Great Britain, great opportunities in India as well. But let me tell you what we can't do. We cannot let a Democrat get elected to this office. If Barbara Boyer is in this office, she'll be pushing for a Green New Deal, which will be the end of the Kansas agriculture industry. It'll be the end of the Kansas oil and gas industry. I'm going to be standing with President Trump to stop that Green New Deal, to stop her Medicare for all, and stop the Democrat policies. I'll be standing beside President Trump, just like I have proven I have been doing, working hard with Secretary Perdue to press strong ag agreements.
Secretary Kobach, you have 90 seconds.
Well, I think I can fairly say that I am the only person directly affected by the tariffs, the soybean tariffs specifically China imposed. I live on a crop-producing farm, and we had soybeans in the field this past season. Price is just under $9 a bushel, and so it certainly affected my pocketbook. But I say that saying also that I will stand with the president 100%, no matter what effect it has on soybean prices. And you know, yes, we had the Phase 1 of the China deal announced on December 13th, and it was a great start. But we still don't know what China is going to be doing next year. And the trade war has not ended. We're still going. And so it's critical that the president have people who have his back. And he cannot have Midwestern congressmen shooting arrows at his back when he's trying to pull terms with China. I think Roger Marshall made a mistake on May 20th, 2019, when he wrote an op-ed in the Kansas City Red Star, which said, Kansas soybean, this is a direct quote almost, Kansas soybean farmers can't take anymore. We cannot stand another round of tariffs. He said that. That quote probably ended up on the president of China's desk because it sent a message, look, the president's getting, his own people are turning back. Republicans in the Congress are not going to stand for another round of tariffs. He can't hold out. His people are defective. If we have to make the president's hand a strong one, which we do, we cannot shoot him in the back and undermine his negotiating position by saying, no, we can't take anymore. So I want to know from Roger Marshall, why did he do that? Why did he write that op-ed, and why did he weaken the president's position? Yeah, you say you stand by the president. I really stand by the president. I don't say things that endanger him.
Congressman, you have a 45-second rebuttal.
Kris, you know that's fake news, that's political spin, that's exactly what the national press does. They grab one little excerpt and then spin it into a great big lie. Let me tell you about my relationship with the president. After I spoke on Fox News about agriculture, he called me and he said, Roger, thank you for doing a great job representing me. When you go back, tell your farmers I love them. That's why he had me to United Nations to sign that Japanese trade agreement with him. That's why we have a great relationship. That's why I spent an hour with the president, because I've had his back. That's why the president reaches out to me and says, thank you, Roger Marshall. I'll never forget the speech that you gave me defending you over the impeachment hearings. I have an incredible relationship with the president, and that's why he supported me and not anybody else on this stage.
The next question will start with Congressman Marshall. The economy, by nearly all estimations, is incredibly healthy. Unemployment's down, wage growth is up, markets continue to impress. So what would you want to change in D.C. if elected on economic policy?
Well, number one is let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep rolling back regulations. And for Kansas, we need to grow those trade markets. With the trade deals we've passed, it's going to mean great things for Kansas. For the USMCA trade agreement, it means generations in the future will have a future ahead of them in farming. From the China trade agreement, it means more pet food being sold to China. Kansas now makes over half of the pet food in the country right now. For beef, we're going to be selling $1 billion of beef to China over the next year. Last year we sold $70 million. This year we're going to sell $1 billion. And thanks to President Trump, we have language in that that's going to protect us. If China does renege, he'll slap tariffs on us so faster than a New York minute, right? So we've got great things happening already. Look what we've done with the regulations. We've rolled back WOTUS. Again, what we can't do is have a Democrat in this office, someone that's going to have the Green New Deal, someone that's going to expand taxes, Medicare for all, Green New Deal would go triple the taxes. That's what's going to kill the economy. More regulations and more taxes are going to kill the economy. I'm in favor of more conservation and more innovation.
Secretary Kobach, you have 90 seconds.
I'll tell you what I'd change. I'd get serious about cutting federal spending. Look, that's one area where we Republicans, we do talk the talk. But sometimes a lot of Republicans don't walk the walk when they get there. Look, we're on schedule to have another $1 trillion deficit. The debt is already over $23 trillion. That's not only unsustainable, it's immoral. That's asking our children and our grandchildren to pay for our spending today. That is what I would change. And in order to do that, you have to elect someone who will be one of the very few senators who's actually serious about cutting federal spending. Now, Roger Marshall tells us that he's with the president, and he's also good about cutting spending. It's not true. Club for Growth gave him a 47% rating, dismal rating, in 2018, ranked him 188th out of all members of Congress in terms of actually cutting spending. The reason why they gave him such a dismal rating, there was a vote to do just a little 1% cut across the board in non-defense spending. Only 1%. And he wouldn't vote for that. He voted with over 150 Democrats in rejecting that. He also voted not to reduce funding to the National Endowment for the Arts. Now, I know we're just rolling in money. It's growing on trees here in Kansas. But we absolutely have lots of money for the National Endowment for the Arts. No, we don't. That should be on the top of our list of things to cut. We need people who are serious about cutting federal spending. It is unsustainable. This is a ticking time bomb in our economy. We have a chance now with a president who's got the guts to stand firm. I will lead the charge in cutting federal spending. I'd love to hear Roger Marshall's answer.
Congressman, you get a 45-second rebuttal before we get a full answer from State Senator Wiggum.
Well, great. More fake news, more political spin by a professional politician. I have a 98% voting record with President Trump. So which one of those votes do you want to challenge me on? Which one of those votes do you want to go against the president on? And the several times I voted against him were on spending. I'm proud of my fight on this budget. There's nothing that keeps me up late at night than worrying about our budget. We have to solve the problem by growing the economy, fixing health care, and keep moving people from welfare to work. This president has created 7 million more jobs. 2 million people have moved from welfare to work. That's how we solve this problem. Growing the economy, giving people new jobs and an education to lift themselves up out of poverty. We've got a plan. I'm working with the president. It's one of his top priorities for this next term. And I promise you, just like I've been working with him, I'm going to keep working to solve this problem as well.
Senator Wiggum, you have 90 seconds.
Here's the bottom line. There's only one way to keep this economy strong, and that is to elect conservatives. Elect conservatives in Kansas, take back the House, elect conservatives in the U.S. Senate, and give him support. And I'm the only one up here who has elected conservatives consistently here in the state of Kansas. I carry that message. I'll do that in the next election. It's all about him having people who will support him who can get things done. And oh, by the way, Congressman Marshall, You had a Republican Congress for 2 years under Trump, and I don't know of anything that was accomplished. I still haven't heard of anything that's really got done. And you had a three-way race. You had a three-way race for a governor's race. I have a Democrat governor now who's raising money, and she is promoting liberal policy. And we need a proven fighter, folks. We need someone who can help Trump, help Kansas, and elect Republicans down ballot, and especially beat Sharice Davis. Who are against regulation, who are for limited government, who will be your voice behind closed doors and in front of people.
Thank you very much. And once again, please keep it. You were both mentioned, so Congressman Marshall, you were mentioned first. We'll give you the first 45-second rebuttal to State Senator Wagle.
I'm sure every night when you watch Sean Hannity, you can see the list of President Trump's accomplishments. And who do you think is standing beside there making those happen? So I do disagree. I think we've done an incredible amount of things. Look at our economy. We have the strongest military we've had ever. We're taking care of our veterans. We have new trade deals out here for Kansas. We have the most pro-life president, pro-life Congress we've ever had. We've rolled back so many regulations, whether it's water of the U.S., so there's so many great things that we've done, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm proud of the record. I think that America is much better today than she was 3 years ago. Keeping a Republican majority is exactly how we keep moving this country in this direction. I'm proud of our record. I'm proud that I've been able to stand beside President Trump and accomplish so many great things for Kansas.
Secretary Kobach, you were also mentioned you had a 45-second rebuttal.
Okay, I'm going to use it to rebut both of my fellow opponents. One is, Roger Marshall said 98% voting record with the president. Look, every Republican has a 95% plus, usually 97% plus voting record, because all of the voting to name post offices, all of the non-controversial things, most Democrats have a 70% plus voting record with the president. So that's not an answer to the question I posed. As for Senate President Wagle, there was a three-way race. No, actually, it wasn't a three-way race. I think it was a 4 or 5-way race. So there will be a libertarian on the ballot. There may or may not be an independent on the ballot. The question is, how do you get to 592,000 votes to win? Having had experience in these races, having looked at what advertising works and what doesn't work, we have a plan that will win, and we will get there. And remember, the candidate that most closely identifies with President Trump is the one most likely to get his 670,000 votes. Thanks.
Next question will go to Secretary Kobach. Mr. Secretary, the President's administration has worked on health care through executive order addressing transparency in drug prices. But if elected to the Senate, what would your goal be legislatively to improve the healthcare sector?
You know, interestingly, I think my own personal experience has some insight into this. So we are a family of 7. I'm type 1 diabetic. One of my daughters, Molly's type 1 diabetic, so we have 2 pre-existing conditions. Very hard to insure. When I was a Secretary of State, I was covered by the very big and generous state employees plan, and that was affordable. But then, when I stepped down from Secretary of State and became a solo practitioner lawyer, self-employed person, I don't know if any of you made a call to an insurance company to see what a self-employed person with a family of 7 costs to insure. It will make your head explode. It was more than double what I was paying for the state insurance. And so we had to look for other options because we couldn't afford it. And so we ended up going with direct primary care, where for $150 we can see a primary doctor whenever we want. And for higher expenses, we have Christian medical sharing. And with that, we were able to get an insurance package that is less than the state plan that I was on before. But that's not the happy ending of the story, because there's some problems it illustrates. One is Christian medical sharing isn't given the favorable tax deductibility that insurance can. That should be allowed. You should allow Christian medical sharing to be insurance deductible, to be tax deductible. Secondly, one of the reasons why Christian medical sharing is so much cheaper is it extends across state lines. We need to make health insurance companies able to compete across state lines. And the third illustration of another problem is we have to pay prescriptions out of pocket. There are very few people who pay cash for their prescriptions because there's not enough people paying directly because health savings accounts haven't been promoted enough. There's not enough downward pressure on price. So competition to decrease price. That's what we need.
Senator Wagle, you have 90 seconds.
Obamacare is broken. I'm about to have to debate Medicaid expansion in the Kansas Senate. Medicaid expansion is a broken system. There's not one federal U.S. president candidate who's saying, let's expand Medicaid. They're all saying, let's expand Medicare. So we have to battle the Democrat call for national health care to put everybody in one pool where you stand in line, where you're capped on the treatments you can receive. It's government-run health care. That's the first thing that we're going to lose in our country, folks, because all they're doing is trying to push everybody into one government pool. That's why it's very, very important that you help me kill Medicaid expansion here in the state of Kansas. Healthcare is my top issue. I'm a cancer survivor. My daughter, who was told to take hospice, many of you have been praying for her, at the end of December, right after Christmas. She's alive. She's home from the hospital. She's frail. But healthcare is not our priority. Let's keep it free market. Once we reintroduce free market principles and competition back into the system, costs will lower. We need to debate healthcare reform. I'm tired of the stagnation on the Hill. Nobody even debates anymore. They don't debate a budget, they don't debate healthcare, they don't debate immigration. We need someone who will stand for Republican values, conservative values, work with their colleagues, and fix our biggest problems, healthcare and immigration. Those are the two biggest issues. Trump can do all he can to regulate it, but Congress and the Senate have to fix it.
Congressman Marshall, 90 seconds.
Healthcare will be the defining issue for this next election. Healthcare will be the defining issue in the general election. And that's why President Trump called me to the Oval Office last March. He wanted to know what the concepts were, that we were working on healthcare to make sure that he and the Congress were on the same page. And after we talked about agriculture and trade for 20 minutes, the president looked at me and said, Roger, tell me what you want to do. And I took a breath, and the first thing the president did was interrupt me. And he said, Roger, whatever you take care of pre-existing conditions. So I worked for 3 or 4 months with the president, and we have outlines for how we would fix pre-existing conditions. That's in phase 1 of our bill. Now in phase 2, we're working on driving the cost of health care down. And there's 3 very simple ways that we're going to do that. We're going to empower patients, we're going to promote competition and choice, and we're going to encourage innovation. If we do those 3 things, we will drive the cost of health care down. But let me tell you what we can't do. Kansas cannot send a Democrat to Washington to vote for Medicare for all. Medicare for all would be the end of Medicare as you would know it. It will dilute Medicare. You'll be standing in line having your care rationed. It'll be the end of the health care you get through your jobs. Nobody, 160 million people who don't want to give up that health insurance. I have been working with the president. We do have a plan, and it is a top priority to get done. I'm so proud to be on the ground steps of fixing this problem. It's why I went to Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Next question goes to State Senator Wagle. As people look to each of you as the next potential U.S. Senator from Kansas, what's a policy or agenda item that gets overlooked that you'd be most interested in tackling?
The budget. My goodness, spending is out of control. We cannot keep deficit spending. It's at $23 trillion. That will destroy the future for our children and for our grandchildren. I used to tell my kids, you're going to have more opportunity than I had. You'll have a better education. You will excel higher than I have. But I can't tell my grandkids that, not with the socialist movement and not with the $23 trillion debt that Congress and Senate refuses to debate, refuses to look at. They just ignore it. It is the #1 thing we need to address, and you can't do that without debate, without a transparent budget bill that everybody has to say about. It seems like it's all done behind closed doors. All of a sudden there's a budget bill, and everybody votes for it. We need a strong voice. We need a conservative. We need more conservatives. We need a conservative who elects other conservatives. We need a way. We need a way for President Trump. And we need to get him reinforcements in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Marshall, you have 90 seconds.
Well, Pete, I appreciate this question, but I tell you what, if you know me, I'm laser locked on the issues that really matter. I'm laser locked on building the wall, fixing healthcare, and balance the budget. I don't have time to go after all these red herrings. And the last thing I'm going to say focus on is trade. And just think again, if Kansas sends a Democrat to Washington, she's going to be against every one of these. Build the wall. She wants open borders, sanctuary cities. Fix healthcare. Her first endorsement was the architect of Obamacare. She wants to expand government into your lives, a complete takeover of healthcare by the government. Balance the budget. She wants to quadruple your taxes and increase spending. And trade, she's always been against the president's trade policy of using tariffs to protect Kansas jobs. I'm going to keep fighting with the president. I'm going to stay laser locked on these issues. Build the wall, fix healthcare, balance the budget, and trade. Thank you.
Secretary Kobach, 90 seconds.
Well, on this one, I'll agree with Senate President Wagle. There's no question the issue that most often gets overlooked is the debt. That's absolutely it, and I'm not going to belabor the point by talking about, again, I will talk about an issue, though, that doesn't get overlooked, but it gets ignored, and that is, of course, immigration. Why is it we haven't had a major immigration bill? The last really truly big bill was the Immigration Reform Act of 1996. We had a couple of really tiny ones since then, in 2005. But why is that? The answer is because the Democrats, whenever there's a good reform, the Democrats put an amnesty on it, and they hold hostage any good bill to an amnesty. Now, we almost had a disaster in 2008, 2009 when the Gang of Eight, led by John McCain and some other Republicans, who weren't willing to hold the Republican line, defected on us. We need people who will hold the line and won't just talk about, I'm going to secure the border out for the president, all this, but actually will take the hard votes. And so on immigration, there are two votes that I want to know. And I asked him, and I'll give him another 45 seconds to answer. I asked Roger Marshall, will you vote to require mandatory verify? You can just say yes or no. And the second thing is, will you vote against amnesty? You guys know my position. I vote against amnesty. I want mandatory e-verify. I want to know if the congressman will tell his people how he will vote on those two critical issues.
Congressman Marshall, 45 seconds.
Asked and answered. I voted for E-Verify twice. I have never been in favor of amnesty. I've always been against amnesty, and I'll always be against amnesty. And again, I want to emphasize that I have fought for the president's funding for the wall. $25 billion of funding. I was instrumental in getting to the House floor, along with a comprehensive immigration fix that including an agriculture guest worker visa fix as well. So I've answered the question. I'll keep answering it. I'm in favor of E-Verify. I'm against amnesty.
This next question may not take all 90 seconds of your time, but if you do not get selected by the people of Kansas in August, start with Congressman Marshall, will you support the eventual nominee?
Yes.
Secretary Kobach?
Yes.
Senator Wagle?
Absolutely.
All right. We go back to Secretary Kobach. If you are elected, what would you do to lower the temperature of partisanship that seems to be taking place in Washington, D.C., for a Senate which's primary task is to help enact legislation to improve the lives of everyday Americans?
I think we all would like to see that. We would like to return to the days when Bob Dole could reach across the aisle and make a deal with Scoop Jackson, and you actually have Democrats who are willing to do things that were good for our country, do things that were consistent with the Constitution, cut the budget, do rational things. But that's not the era we're living in now. I wish I could say, I'm going to make those Democrats do a whole bunch of things that we Republicans like. We're not there anymore. We're in a much more partisan, much more combative period of politics. And that's why President Trump has shown Republicans this is a time you need to fight. Because during that transition period, during the 2000s to 2015 or so, a lot of Republicans weren't fighting. They were just rolling over. And I think we have to recognize that until the other side stops following AOC, stops jumping after things like the Green New Deal, and stops doing things that are ridiculous like advancing socialism, we are going to have to fight. When they start reaching across the aisle, absolutely, I'll grab their hand and say, come on aboard, let's work together. But that's not where we are right now. We are in a position where we need Republican fighters who will not give 1 inch when it comes to defending our Constitution, will not give 1 inch when it comes to defending our life, will not give 1 inch, will not say, oh, sure, we can make a little compromise here, and then the Democrats bring in all the things they want. We are in a different era in politics right now, and we need someone who's a fighter to fight for us.
Thank you so much. As you all know, you know my record, I do not compromise on conservative values or on bills that I'm voting on. I've stood with you. I've worked with a lot of you here. I've stood with you on conservative principles, thick and thin. But here's the deal. I'm relational. I work with people. I communicate well with others. And just last year, I was able to talk my minority leader of the Kansas Senate to work with me on passing the ethics reform bill. You need people who stand firm for conservative values, but who are relational, so that when somebody gets timid, you can move in and teach them a better path, a better way. You can teach them about free market principles, about limited government. A good leader never compromises, but a good leader brings other people under their tent. And that's what all that I've been doing as Senate President. I'm the best leader for this seat. I'll be your proven conservative voice. I will be respected in the Kansas, in the U.S. Senate, and I'll get things done. And you know what? When someone gets weak, I'll pull them in, and I'll teach them why we believe in the founding principles that we have here in this nation.
Congressman Marshall, 90 seconds.
Well, number one is I'll always stand up for Kansas values like faith and family, community, and education. But when I get together with Democrats, what I try to do is focus on objectives. What is your goal here? What do you believe in? And if we can agree on an objective, then we sometimes get caught up in the weeds on how to get there. But I have to agree upon an objective first. So when I sit down with Democrats, I say, what does securing the border look to you? Why would that be important to you? And maybe it's drugs coming across the border. Maybe it's terrorists coming across the border. But usually I can find something that we can agree upon. And the next is about relationships. And I'm so proud of the relationships that I have with other Democrats and other members of Congress. Every Thursday morning, get together for prayer breakfast with 40 to 50 other Republicans and Democrats and pray for this country, pray for our leaders, just like the Bible tells us to do. And then on Tuesday night, I meet with Democrats, senators, and Republicans as well and discuss issues, everything except what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I think next I would talk about my wife. My wife is my secret weapon, and you got to meet her this week, and you know that she's one of the most endearing people you ever have met. And her ability to go to the bipartisan prayer groups and make relationships with other people spills over into my office, whether it's with Jim McGovern, one of the most radical Democrats you'll ever meet, but we both agree that we need to be doing something with all these agriculture products and make sure we get them across the country and across the world when we can. So I'll keep building relationships, building a team, and proud to be a Kansan.
This question begins with State Senator Wagle. Senator, when you meet people from other parts of the country and the world, what's the one story about Kansas you oftentimes share with them?
The beauty of the Kansas hills, the people. The one thing about the Kansas people is they're relational. They smile. When you walk past them, you can look in their eyes. They don't hide from you. I tell them about our authenticity, our hard work values, and the fact that we are conservatives and we elevate conservatives. We're family oriented. We're the heart of the nation. We're often under attack, and the left has tried to move in, and they want to take over the Kansas legislature, and they want to take this seat. But I explain to everybody that my people are firm, they're grounded, they're family oriented, they participate in government, they're relational, and they're the best people in the world to represent.
Congressman Marshall, you have 90 seconds.
Well, first of all, we talk about the Chiefs. And it's amazing everywhere I go, people do know about the Chiefs. They want to know about Kansas barbecue. They want to know about Kansas meat. And I try to establish a relationship and listen to them. When I'm in Cuba, I ask them, what's important to you all? And how can we get some of those Cuban cigars into America? And by the way, we'll sell you some Kansas weed in exchange for that. So I like to pride myself on being a good listener and ambassador. Again, my wife and I are a great team when we go out. And again, there's just been great roadwork played for us by Senator Dole and Roberts and Moran. Everywhere we go, greatly respected. If I get down deep in the conversation, I'll talk about Kansas work ethics and just the quality of our commodities, whether it's pet food, beef, rice or wheat, cotton, whatever it is. I enjoy getting to share with the commodities that come from Kansas and the Midwest. Thank you.
You know, the best story you can tell about Kansas is to actually bring people from outside of Kansas into our state. And I bet everyone in this crowd has a story about that. When I was Secretary of State, I used to host and I asked if I could host for the Republican Secretary of State Committee an event in Kansas to bring other Secretaries of State in. And so being who I am, I asked if I could host a pheasant hunt. And so every year we would bring in a group of Republican Secretaries of State from far corners of the country to come to this pheasant hunt. And they would fly into the Kansas City airport, and then they would drive through beautiful hills, the limestone hills along the Kansas River between Kansas City and Topeka. And then they would drive through the Flint Hills past Manhattan, and then they would get towards Salina and they'd see the Smoky Hills, and then they'd go northwest from there and they'd see the Blue Hills, and they would be hunting and they would say, I had no idea Kansas looked like this. I thought Kansas was boring as can be. I thought it was ugly, and I thought it was not going to be that exciting. So that's the first thing they learn. And then the second thing they learn as they come to our state, the moment they get into the airport, now technically that's Missouri, I know, but the moment they get into the airport, people are friendly to them. And you all know this. You bring someone from New York to Kansas, especially New York, but if you bring someone from anywhere in the Northeast to Kansas, they will say, people here are so friendly. I can't believe it. They're just talking to me like they know me. So bringing people to Kansas tells the story of Kansas, both the natural beauty of our state that we are so blessed to enjoy, and the friendliness of the people of Kansas, which they learn as soon as they come here. So I will continue to do that. I'll continue to invite people to Kansas, but maybe not so many people from California.
We are going to get to our closing statements. You each have 2 minutes based on the agreed upon order. We start with State Senator Susan Whale.
Thank you, Pete. I love your show. It's a tremendous honor to be here with activists in the Republican Party, people who have carried our values for years, people who network back in their communities, people who help our legislature, people who work with congressmen. Thank you for coming to Kansas City to be a part of the grand old party. Let's be successful. Let's elect someone who has a proven record, who can unite people, who can get, I just passed a bill, a constitutional amendment. I was able to get 28 votes for the pro-life amendment because people respect me, because I'm a good debater, and because I'm experienced in working with legislative leaders. I'm the candidate that you can trust to help elect other conservatives. And when I go to Washington, I will be your voice. I will be your proven, consistent, conservative voice in the U.S. Senate. So it doesn't matter whether you work in the fields of the Great Plains, or whether you work in a manufacturing facility around South Central Kansas, around Wichita, or maybe you're employed by a high-tech startup here in Johnson County that is having phenomenal growth. I will be your advocate, and you will be proud of my representation. And I'm going to welcome you in the doors, give you a tour once I win, and we'll work together to raise up other conservatives in Kansas, to win other seats, and keep Kansas red.
One of the greatest honors of my life was to sit down for lunch with Bob Dole shortly after getting to Congress. And I was going to ask him about a tough vote I was going to have to take, and I was expecting Senator Dole to give me great wisdom. And instead what Senator Dole said was, Roger, go back to Kansas and listen to the people. They will tell you the answer. I've always thought that the best doctors were good listeners. And I think the best congressmen and women, the best senators are good listeners as well. You know, we just completed this 20-city journey. And there were 3 things that everywhere I went, Kansans wanted to know. Number 1 is, are you standing by the president? And again, just thanks to the hundreds of people that came up to me last night and said, thank you for standing with the president. And I promise you I'm going to keep standing with him, a proven track record of working with President Trump. The next thing they want to know is, are you electable? The media, the national media, has told people that Kansas is purple. Because we lost a governor's race, we lost a House race, they think Kansas is purple, but it's not. All polling would show that we would beat Barbara Boyer by 10 to 15 points. I promised President Trump, he asked me how I'm doing, I said, President Trump, you're going to win by 25 points, so don't let me down. President Trump wins by 25, we're going to win by 15 or 20 points as well. The next thing they ask me is, what are your values? Now, they don't always say that directly, they'll kind of prod a little bit. And I shared it earlier, faith, family, community, and education. A faith you wear on your heart, not your shirt sleeve. A loving family, a caring community, and education is the great equalizers. Kansans value education. It's what allowed me to live the American dream. So thank you for letting me share my vision for Kansas. I promise you that as I ask for your vote, that I will keep Kansas great, that we're going to keep America great, and that we truly are the land of the free and the home of the cheese.
Secretary Kobach, you have 2 minutes.
You know, it's often said that you can tell a person by the company he keeps. And I've been honored to be supported by, vocally, some of the leaders of the conservative movement in America. People like Sheriff David Clark, people like Ann Coulter. And I've been endorsed early by the Gun Owners of America, by the National Association of Gun Rights, and by the National Border Patrol Council. And by the way, the officers of the Border Patrol, they don't endorse in hardly any Senate races. They endorse the president, but they only endorse in a Senate race when there's somebody in that race that they think is going to be a game changer, is going to actually change the facts on the ground at the southern border. And I'm honored that they decided to endorse me in this race. Now, you can also tell a lot about a person by the enemies they have. I'm the only person on this stage who has been criticized by name by Chuck Schumer, by AOC, by Sheila Jackson Lee, and by Rachel Maddow. Now, I never thought I'd use them in a speech, but here it is. Why is it that they have singled out me and criticized me over the years? It's because I've done things that threaten their agenda. And so that poses a question for you. Do you want a senator who will try to get along with everybody, try to not make any waves, don't take a stand, don't do anything that might make people nervous? Or do you want a senator who will threaten the interests of Chuck Schumer, AOC, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Rachel Maddow? Because I will continue to threaten their interests. I will fight for your interests. And I will fight for the Constitution that they are constantly trying to erode and attack. And so I humbly ask you for your vote. I know that if you vote for me, if you support me, each one of you represents dozens of other people. And so I ask you, go with me on this journey. We will get there, and we will win big, not for Kansas, but for the entire country.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here for the debate. Before we break, Pete Mundo, would you stand up? Can we give him some appreciation? Pete has volunteered his time yesterday to do the 3rd District. He volunteered his time to do it today. Now, we are tight on time, so anybody that has a ticket that's going to KFL lunch, we need to get you over there right away. So I want you to start making your way there. I know some of you have a group photo out at Eisenhower. But remember, if you're a delegate, we have to have you here seated at 2 o'clock. Allow time to come back and get ready. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you all.